We're going to move now into our next session, our first panel, and Dave Foulkes from the Ohio EPA will be leading that for us. So Dave, are you on? You ready to go ahead?
Yes, sorry, I'm here. I had muted myself. Oh, the beauty of Zoom.
All right, thanks, Dave. I'll turn it over to you.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, I guess, depending on where we are in the United States. I am going to be the moderator or facilitator for this panel, the evolution of the SBEAP program. And real quickly, this is what's on your agenda, but the idea of this panel, how it's formed, we know that the programs have evolved over the years, the last 30 years. And with that evolution, we've come with a range of program sizes and maturity of programs, or the age of programs. And the idea of this panel here is to gain a little insight into what is working, what worked in the past, what maybe isn't working now, or what changes have happened, adaptability with how the business world and environmental world has adjusted, and how we deliver those services to meet the needs of our customers and clients. And, it's also going to be based on a lot of these factors, right? Funding, staff, and also how the COVID pandemic has impacted these services. Even though we're the different phase in the pandemic, it's still impacting the services. Next slide, please, Chris. So just a little bit, about our panelists here. We have, from the state of Utah, we have Eleanor Divver, and she is with the Utah Department of Environmental Quality in the Small Business Environmental Assistance Program. And you can see here on this slide, we have kind of a range of program size. We had an overview of how many people are in a program, like how many FTEs, how many years with the program, and some of the general services offered. We have Belinda Fowler, and she is with Environmental Assistance Coordinator with the state of Nebraska. Actually, this is Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy. And then we have Sarah Johnson from New Hampshire. She's a Small Business Technical Assistance Program Manager Ombudsman. Again, she is with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And then last but not least, we have Dan Sowry, and he works with me at the Ohio EPA's Office of Compliance, Citizens, and Pollution Prevention. And he is the Assistant Chief of our office. And as you can see here, the range of programs and the size, and this what's make this panel unique, is that we'll have different perspectives. So the plan here is we have 3 bigger questions, different parts. And so we're going to just ask each one to kind of address each question, and we'll go through them. The idea, hopefully we'll get through everything in about 40 to 45 minutes and allow time for people to put additional questions in chat, and we'll try to get to it. We only have an hour, and we want to kind of stick to the plan so we have time to stretch and move on to the next part of the agenda, the ending part of the agenda this afternoon. So thanks, Chris. Can you go to the next slide? And with that, I'm going to start with Eleanor. And question 1, how did you start or evolve and maintain your program and stay focused on your SBEAP role within your agency or organization?
Hi, my name is Eleanor Divver, and I'm with the Utah Department of Environmental Quality. And I'm really lucky today. I'm in Kanab, Utah, and it is just beautiful red rock down south here, and it's about 72 degrees. So feel really lucky today. But I just wanted to start by saying I felt like when I got on board and took over the SBEAP program, there hadn't been a lot being done. And one of the most important things was changing our website URL from BizHelp. They had changed it to BizHelp, and I switched it over to SBEAP just so that it was nationally consistent with KSU and the rest of the states. And that seemed to really help a lot move our program along. And then we really redid our landing page. We made things more user-friendly and inviting. We made it easier to navigate so that they could really look and have questions answered by navigating through our website. And then we came up with a slogan that SBEAP is a free, confidential, and non-regulatory program designed to assist businesses with navigating environmental permitting. So that really helped, I think, a lot of businesses and people thinking about going into business, that they could trust us and ask us questions and know that we were non-regulatory. So I think that was really helpful. And then I also think the other thing we focused on was building partnerships. That was really key and critical. And at first I was really struggling with knowing who to reach out to and where to turn. And John Podolinsky out of Montana was super helpful and critical in that role of helping me know what were my most important partners. So I appreciate that. And then also just to mention, we are multi-programmatic in Utah. So I am able to answer questions and assist businesses in air quality, water quality, waste management, hazardous waste with the UST and the LUST. And so that's super helpful. Like one of the things Josh talked about was the bundling of the pollution prevention. I loved that, because that is really what I try to do, is bundle things to the environmental permitting questions and questions that they have to help them navigate things a little bit better. And then I started to just create templates to similar questions that I was getting. And so now it's much easier for me to respond. I think I've made it more clear and easier for folks to navigate. So that's all that I have. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for answering. That's great. I know, and we might have more time at the end. I think it'd be interesting to see your insight to how the program's evolved since you've been in your program for 2 years. A lot has happened in the next couple of years, but that's a question later on. I think it's the second or third question, and I think it's something we can dive into a little more. Okay, the next up is Belinda, and basically same question. How do you start, evolve, and maintain your program, and then stay focused on your program's SBEAP role within your agency and organization?
Sure. So, Eleanor, I'm a little bit jealous of your weather. It's cloudy and rainy and cold and windy here in Nebraska, but we're looking forward to some warmer temperatures this weekend, as well as some sunshine. So happy Mother's Day to those celebrating this coming Sunday with the nice upcoming weather. I'm not sure how far back folks on the call would like me to go with this question. I started at this agency, Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy, as an intern many moons ago. Got my feet wet in the water program, no pun intended. Learned a lot about scientific stuff, and then moved on to a different state agency where I still did some environmental work. And then I got to come back 20 years later after a variety of experiences on the outside. So I had a lot of exposure initially to the programs that the agency had responsibility for. And I always say that our folks in-house trained me vicariously through the phone, because I incessantly asked questions then as I do now. And so some familiarity is where we start. Andrew Hugg is also on the call today. He is my counterpart here within NDEE. We've started by sharing responsibilities for our permit matrix, which gives us a nice cheat sheet, if you will, for the permits that the agency issues, and a way for us to go into associated information for each one of those permits. When I started back here with the agency about 4 years ago now, I had a counterpart at that point in time that trained me on some initial guidance documents that were really important for us to read for small and new and up and coming businesses, as well as businesses that were expanding. I was grateful for Ryan Green's help. Nancy, I think you know him well. And he's still with us, just in a different area of the agency. So if I really need him, I can reach out. We started our program here at the agency with the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990. We are multi-programmatic as well. So we cover water, energy, hazardous waste, and air. We do a lot of compliance assistance visits. We have a generalized email address where we accept questions incoming from the regulated community and any member of the public, really. We've continued to evolve by standing up a couple of different teams. In-house, we have a Grow Nebraska team, which is focused specifically on permitting for new business, and we'll set up what are called one-stop meetings and invite other agencies and organizations, as well as local planning officials, to those meetings as new businesses come in to ask their initial permitting questions or zoning questions or what have you. Those teams meet on a quarterly basis. Our second one is our compliance outreach and assistance team. That one maybe doesn't have as much structure around it at the current time. We're kind of brainstorming where do we take compliance outreach and assistance from where we are today. And I will definitely take Josh's presentation just a little bit earlier forward to the team, as I thought there was really good information in there. So with that, I think that's really about all I have. I mean, we do have an active CAP in Nebraska. I think we're fortunate. We do have an annual meeting, and we're constantly learning back and forth how we can better work together, and always more work to do in that regard.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Belinda. Next up is Sarah Johnson from New Hampshire. And Sarah, basically, same question: how you start, evolve, and maintain your program and stay focused on your SBEAP role within your agency and organization.
Thank you. So I host an annual meeting with Air Resources Division staff, since I'm paid through Title V fees. And that includes the compliance administrator, the environmental health program, permitting, division director, and whoever else in the air thinks that they may need some help on something. And we talk about what sectors I should be reaching out to. Maybe there's a rule that is going to come changing up through EPA that we've agreed to do outreach with. Our Air Resources program doesn't have a specific outreach group for any of their stuff. So we have engineers actually doing outreach for permit holders, or we do have some outreach for technical services, which is more like cars, Granite State cars or something, but there's really nothing down there. So it's really hard for me to keep them focused on the small business sector, because that's really what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's what I want to do. So I have to work very hard on that. They're very flexible about the type of projects I do or who I work with. For example, this year something came up with PFAS and marinas potentially, and that was fine with the division director to let me work with marinas because they are small and they're seasonal. So I was able to do that because PFAS is such a big hot topic around here anyway, so do that. And so through that annual meeting becomes an annual work plan, and that work plan I set up into a balanced scorecard format. And I don't know, I know Colorado has a balanced scorecard, and I think some other states do too, but I have one for my program. So there's 4 sections of that, which is, one is customer feedback, which I have a survey that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Love to have a presentation on that for the feedback surveys. My performance and mission, which is my site visits, information requests, web page design, also a lot of promotional tasks under there. I do a lot of promoting with internally as well as externally to keep people asking me questions as well as getting new projects. And then there's the employee development section of it, which is really what the National Steering Committee is, and meetings like this is keeping my knowledge active and current versus having webinars, being part of organizations. And then there's the operations section, which is internal stuff. And that is like standards operating procedures. And that's the work group. I'm on the environmental justice work group, and internally, I'm also on the lean networking work group. And I'm on those to basically promote my program, my services to other internal staff. And through those partnerships and work groups is where all my referrals come from and where all my ideas come from, and the needs of what the agency is looking for. I try to be ahead of the curve. I'm trying to look ahead. I want to always prove my worth of what I'm doing. And we'll get to that in a few more questions later. But I work very hard at promoting myself internally and externally, and learning to say no. That's another tactic. When you're a one-person program, you do have to say no. You just can't do it all. It's just not possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And that actually, that was a good segue after we have Dan respond just about learning to say no and balancing your resources, which you're right. I think we can cover later on. So just keep those thoughts in mind so we can talk about them a little bit. Next up here is Dan Sowry from Ohio. Dan, same thing. Question number one, how do you start, evolve, maintain your program, and stay focused on our program's role, SBEAP role within our agency organization? Oh, Dan's muted.
There we go. I was waiting to be unmuted. I had unmute capabilities and then I muted myself, and apparently I took away my mute capabilities. But so I looked at this question a little differently. I was looking at this of like, what's kind of the history and how did you end up staying focused within the agency that you're in? And, some of us are in a regulatory agency. Some of us are at universities. Some of us are with chambers of commerce. So we're all kind of a mixed bag, but we are in the regulatory agency. And unlike most states, we kept EPA in our name. And there's some pros and cons to that one. But how we started the program, this was long before me, but as you know, the Clean Air Act amendments ended up creating some kind of small business assistance program, specifically around air for small businesses with some confidentiality. But in, was it 2004, a director came into Ohio EPA as the new director. Some of you might have what's called administrators, but basically that's the head of our agency. And they had some legislative pressure on like, how are you going to assist businesses versus just smacking them with enforcement and telling them when they've done it wrong. And so this director said, well, let's take that small business assistance program. Let's combine that with a small business assistance office that was already in the agency, and they were geared more to create assistance type of resources like fact sheets, guidance documents, that sort of thing. Put them in plain English format. Don't start off with pursuant to Ohio Administrative Code because you lose everybody but attorneys at that point. And then also Dave Foulkes, our moderator, he came from our Office of Pollution Prevention. They bolted all three of those together and made what's called the Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention. We then sought confidentiality for all of our programs. So we have confidentiality, not just in policy, but actually in statute for all of our programs, all of our multimedia assistance. We later bolted on a recycling grant program, which ties into the sustainability and the pollution prevention aspects of what we were doing. And I think this last part of like, how do you stay focused on your role? I think and we'll talk, and it's kind of leading into those other questions as others have alluded to, but your external customers may be the most obvious. Small businesses out there struggling to keep out of trouble and stay in compliance. But actually, I think, and I'm going to make this argument in a couple of the other questions too, but I think that your internal customers, your agency, your programs, your inspectors, those are the folks that are actually your most important audience, your most important customers, because they are the ones that will keep you afloat in future administrations.
Great, thanks, Dan. That's the beauty of like that first question. You could kind of see the cornucopia of different answers we had, which is great, kind of from the different programs. So Chris, can we go to the next slide, the next question, please? Thanks. All right, so question 2, and Sorry, like I'm being asked to start my video. So now you get to see my mug. So question 2 is, what are your ongoing challenges and how do you adjust to the fires such as staff constraints, funding woes, and pandemic disruption? And I'm going to flip up the order here. So I'm going to start with Dan since he was last. Now I get to go first. And since his camera's still on. So Dan, if you want to take a shot at this.
I'll try to keep this short and sweet. When you're in government in general, and maybe any organization, you're dealing with perceptions and not necessarily facts. So what does that program do? What does your SBEAP do? Are they doing enough? Or is it just some fluffy thing and hardly anybody takes advantage of it? So I think the challenge is that you're always dealing with perceptions, and the way that you deal with perceptions, if you leave it up to other people, they will form perceptions about you and your program. If you have facts and those facts are the actual outcomes, not your outputs. So here's the thing. We historically in our program, we focused on, we helped X number of businesses. We helped we filled out X number of permit applications, that sort of thing. But that doesn't really tell the outcomes. Did we save anybody any money? Did we help them avoid regulations? Did we save them time? Did we keep them out of trouble? So telling your story, I think, is vital as you continue dealing with perceptions, and document all of your accolades, document all of your accomplishments as your program, and put that out there as much as possible. So if you have another administration that comes in and says, no, we're only enforcement based and we're not here to help people, that's typically not supported by either political parties, but you want to make it impossible for a future administration to defund you by telling your story and not allowing the naysayers to kind of silence you. And then I think the challenge moving on is continuing to be innovative, sharing assistance tools like we would do through this conference. The big thing I get out of these conferences is learning from all of the other programs of what worked for them. What tools did they come up with? What type of, assistance tools, maybe like a permit wizard. We copied that idea, I think, from IDEM, from Jennifer Collins. So constantly being innovative and changing with the times as well.
Great, thanks, Dan. So we're gonna go reverse order. So next up is Sarah Johnson. Just same question, discuss your ongoing challenges and how you adjust to the fires or the barriers such as staff constraints, funding woes, pandemic disruption.
Well, I want to agree with Dan. That perception is a huge deal. It was especially a huge deal during the pandemic when we were all sent home and we were told, we still had to do our job, and we did. We all did our job at home remotely. I found remote work to be fantastic for me personally. For the remote work, I realized I didn't realize when I was in the office how often people were distracting me. I didn't realize how many people were coming up to my desk just to chit chat, or in the hallway, or in the kitchen, or just everywhere. And then being home, I had time to think. I had time to strategize. I had time to plan. Oh my goodness. Planning is amazing. It's also very difficult when you're one person, you're planning, because you come up with all these great ideas and no one else can do them but you. So you have to then pick and choose, which makes strategic planning even more important. That has been just kind of fascinating, but the controlling your own story has been another fascinating thing. I've always been back in my time in pollution prevention about outcomes and promoting yourself, and doing that has always followed through what I do. And I found that social media was a great way to promote myself. I did such a great job during the pandemic of promoting myself through social media. It caught the attention of our commissioner, and he was so happy to see that I was still going out in the field. I was posting about new stuff. I was posting contact me all the time, and none of these other programs were doing that. And I was doing that. He's like, it was great because he could tell the governor, oh no, we have people going out. Oh no, we have people answering calls. Oh no, it's been not a big deal. This is happening constantly. We're doing great. So that was a really good thing. Also through that whole pandemic issue was I had to create new partnerships so I could get those referrals. I had to, because I was one of the few people still going out during the pandemic, I got like 20 to 30 site visits from our hazardous waste section because they weren't going out, but I was willing to go out because I was going to small places. I wasn't going to shops where 200 people are in there manufacturing floors. I was going to a one-person auto body shop. I was going to a one-person wood coater shop. You know, those are easy, so I could do those. So I really enjoyed all those activities out in the field to get me out. Another huge fire happened during the pandemic. We were in the middle of a reorg of our webpage and complete formatting, completely updating all our publications so they were ADA compliant. We were really trying to look at how many visits we were getting to every page and to every document, and really, do we need those every page and every document? Because if you got 0 to 1 person looking at it, why do you have that on the web page? It was clouding up your messages. And learning how to, thank goodness I was remote and no one distracting me, to figure out what was really important and necessary to be on my web page. And it really changed my page dramatically, I think. And without that pandemic, I'm pretty sure I would never had the effort, the time, the thought process to put all that work in. So I really kind of appreciated that quietness again. And like I said before, I'm one person trying to do 120 things. It's been really hard to do that. That will continue to be hard. I'm always trying to find new internal staff to delegate to. Can I do that? Sometimes I can. But you know, part of it is I do like my job. I like what I do. I was chit-chatting with an auto body shop today that I have visited 3 times in the past, and he asked me to come again. And he's an hour and a half away. I'm going to go. Good to see Dave. There's, you know, a local coffee shop in town, whatever. So I'm, the staff constraints is the hardest. I never have enough time. Haven't had any financial problems yet. I can't imagine, it could happen, but for now, everything seems to be going well with that.
Thanks, Sarah. And that's kind of interesting that both you and Dan, and talking about Ohio and New Hampshire, different size programs, talked about controlling your story or the messaging that's important. So, you know, that's something that probably rings true for all programs, all sizes, even like Dan talked about, whether you're out of a regulatory program or a TAP out of a university or some type of other government entity or chamber of commerce. So since we're going back up to order, this question is, or question 2 is, we're going to give a chance for Belinda to answer. Same thing, talk about your challenges and how do you adjust to the fires and staff constraints, funding woes, and all other types of disruptions or barriers.
Sure. So 1.5 FTEs, as Sarah noted, you know, there's obviously not enough time to do everything that we would like to get done. There's constant change within our agency, moving forward with innovative practices, putting things online, developing new systems, staff turnover, and all of that. So obviously during the pandemic, while I also enjoyed working from home, it made it a little more challenging to maybe make those relationships with new incoming staff that are in programs where you tell them what you do, or you just have that happenstance interaction in the break room when you're heating up your cup of coffee. And so I think internally and externally, it's important, obviously, to always work on building those personal relationships, understanding what they do and where their expertise is. Even 4 years into this program and with a plethora of history behind me in the program and in environmental overall, I learn something new every single day. When you're multi-programmatic, you're not maybe as deep in subject matter expertise as what you would like to be. So balancing that out across the people that you work with, as well as what you bring to the table as the SBEAP contact is interesting. And I think Andrew could maybe agree with me a little bit that sometimes it's hard to know who we're supposed to reach out to, or who would be the best contact, or if that person's not available, is there a secondary person to back that up if we and the regulated community have questions. So I think those personal relationships would be one of the things that I would tout as of high importance. and how you start to adjust as you start to build that depth within your organization and be able to go to those people that understand what you're doing, why you're doing, and why you're asking maybe in-depth questions about their program. I think one of the other things that we've done to adjust is we have recreated ourselves to some extent. We've worked really hard with our programs over the last 3.5 years to put up webinar recordings on our website. And what that does is it gives us an opportunity to recreate directions that we may be repeating on the phone or in email, and giving somebody information that they can be interactive with. We post up our slide decks for those that are the basis for those webinars, as well as our question and answer documents, so that people can go back and make notes on those, or say, hey, I had a question on slide 17 in regard to my facility. What are you talking about, or how does this apply? And so I think that's been really helpful to recreate ourselves as far as instructional type videos. And I think we're moving forward with that, not only in webinars, but also in a multimedia format. I think, as others have noted, the story about what we do, why we do what we do, and building our clientele, so to speak. You know, I think a sign of a successful program when you're first starting out and it's beginning to grow is you're making those initial contacts with those companies when they're really in dire straits, or they really feel like they're stuck and they need help. And then over time, your list grows deeper on the backside as you begin to help more new companies that are coming in. So our clientele list continually grows, and then we still have the same number of position allocations for SBEAP. So I think that's an interesting perspective to maybe bring forward. I think overall, we've all pivoted really well as far as working together, learning to work online, and reaching out to one another in-house as well as externally. We had a record number of compliance assistance visits last year, actually, during the height of the pandemic. So I found that to be really interesting. And as we stand right now, those numbers have reduced somewhat. So waiting for additional requests. So with that, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Belinda. As you can see, this question too is a loaded question in a good way. There's a lot of information that could be in a lot of discussions. We could have our own panel just about question 2. So I'm going to turn this question 2 response over to Eleanor for the last before we move on to our final third question. So just what kind of ongoing challenges and how your program has adjusted to the fires, you know, and barriers of staff constraints, funding, woes, pandemic, or if you want to build on anything that the first 3 panelists have, you know, asked, go ahead.
So I would say that also the pandemic disrupted a lot of in-person site visits. Our office and state didn't want us to be going out on in-person visits. So we did a lot of things virtually, which was great. And then also we were able to really build those templates and the website so that it was easier to connect with people. And then also along that same line, even now that the pandemic is winding down and we're able to go do site visits, it still is a little bit tricky in such a large state. I had a company call and they wanted me to come up and help them out, and I wanted to so much, but it was at least 2 hours away to drive up to their company. So then that would be a whole full day at least to be up there and spend some time with them. So we did what we could virtually and on the phone because I just didn't have the time to give that week to help them out. So that's one of our challenges as well. I would say one of the things starting out in these last couple of years has been making and having companies trust in us. We are housed in a regulatory agency, and I think that can make a difference. And so just making sure that we start building the relationships. I mean, I've seen a huge difference in a positive way in the past 2 years, because then once you start building those relationships, people start trusting you and recommending you to other folks and businesses to reach out to. So that's helped just really a lot. And then one thing that's interesting is it feels like the SBEAP program is a little bit of a hurry up and then wait. So like you are trying to predict or guess what folks are going to need help with, and they call and they want the answers yesterday. So they're a little bit in a hurry. Businesses want answers right away, want things done, and need help out just right away. So I've definitely found that as the coordinator of the SBEAP program, I have to really be able to respond quickly, or at least reach out to them and schedule a meeting with them. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. And then in regards to funding woes, I mean, we are a 0.5 FTE, and we also, like all of your programs, want to look at the environmental justice component of our programs as well. And so we did apply for the P2 grant in hopes to assist with some of our funding woes. And I will also mention that in the next question as well. And that's all that I have, Dave.
Great. Well, I think that's kind of interesting. Just before we move on to question 3, Chris, is, I heard building relationships for other professional relationships, and I think we can all agree that's an important component, no matter what size your program is or where you're housed. Kind of that trust factor. There's an embedded trust factor with your regulatory community and client base. All right, so on to question 3. And Eleanor, I'm going to leave you. You're up. We're doing a rotation. You're going to go first now. Like, keep that thought in mind. So what is working and what makes your program successful, and what tools, including technology and social media, do you use and recommend? And again, some of this has been mentioned previously, but feel free to build on it.
Sure. And I'm going to actually repeat myself again. So building trust again with other agencies, with my partners. And then also one real key thing has been internally. When I first started, I had been doing the radon program. So some of the internal folks in air and hazardous waste and water, we didn't have relationships. And so internally, they maybe didn't feel as comfortable as they do now, turning over businesses and recommending businesses reach out to me and asking for my help for pre-design meetings when new businesses and larger companies are going to start. And now they do. So I would definitely say, if you're one of the newbies, time and patience is required. You kind of have to just stay with it and make sure you're really there to respond, daily, and be able to reach out to people with good answers and create great templates and assistance. Then the other thing I would say that I started to do even during the pandemic, once it was really easing up, was I started working with Small Business Administration, and they would do road shows. And so I went out on the road and really created some great partners along the way with other state agencies and other business entities that had government relationships. So they were calling them road shows with SBA. And I'm sure one of the reasons that they did that was because Utah is such a large state. But it was really nice and productive to be able to go out into the rural areas and then meet their city government people and build relationships and answer questions for businesses. And then I got lots of referrals as a result of building those relationships with the other rural small businesses. And then I would say that our most important technology has really been our SBEAP website. So the sbeap.utah.gov and changing that URL and then pulling people in that way. You know, it was interesting to hear Sarah say that she's using social media. I mean, we've done it a little bit and we've tried during the Small Business Week to put out a press release and get some interest in that regard. And we've not had a lot of success in that, but we also learn so much when we try things and they don't succeed as well, right? So then we just try new things. And then also, just like I mentioned, we're applying for that pollution prevention grant, of course, crossing our fingers that we receive that. And then we will even pull in more partners and become involved. We're hoping with more of the rural folks and business across the state in the Wasatch Front. So that's all that I have on that, Dave.
Thanks, Eleanor. That's good. That's a great overview. That will segue. I'm going to ask this in question to Belinda. You know, what is working? You know, what makes you successful, and what other tools, including technology, social media, would you use and recommend? I think you're muted, Belinda. Sorry.
Yep. Sorry. So I think we've mentioned a lot of these already as part of Nebraska's efforts to be successful in our small business environmental assistance program. You know, our webinars have been awesome opportunities for people to engage with us on a regular basis without us having to physically take the time once we have that resource available online. I think surveys are really important with the regulated community overall. We got great feedback from one of the initial surveys that we did, and what our stakeholders communicated back is they were always looking for those opportunities to engage with us, whether or not we were presenting or if we were just attending an event. So I think, you know, we have some discussions going on with our teams as far as what additional tools can we help leverage that will support that initial customer feedback and voice of the customer survey that we got their comments on. Communication is key. I think Eleanor mentioned being responsive, you know, hurry up and wait, but at the same time, if somebody submitted a question, I guess an informal metric that we try to hold our standards to is I try to get back to them within 24 to 48 hours. That's a high standard as far as a response, but at the same time, I think it's necessary. And I think it's very key to our programs building credibility. I think when a new or expanding business is coming in and they're saying, hey, I may need, you know, 10 different permits from your agency. What does this look like? We try, and we have a set metric on this for our Grow Nebraska team that we meet within the 10 days of a request. And there's some pretty higher upper level folks in our agency that are involved in those meetings. And oftentimes we'll reach out across our agency boundaries. We'll have state fire marshal involved. We may have Department of Economic Development folks that attend those meetings. We might reach out to Department of Natural Resources, who issues a different type of permit for what it is that they're doing. And so we call it a one-stop meeting to get everybody at a table all at once to save as much time for that business as we can and get them as much productive information as we can up front. We also do what are called scoping meetings, and we worked as a team to put together an initial business development questionnaire. You know, what questions do we need to, if I'm a business owner, what questions do I need to answer right away coming into your permitting matrix or into environmental regulations? What do I need to answer and what do I need to know? SIC codes are a big part of that. And most of the time when I'm talking to new business or expanding business, they may not know what their code is and then finding them the resources. So when we do those initial scoping meetings, we'll talk with them, run through that questionnaire. and then make a determination off of the information in that as far as what programs are likely to be involved in-house as well as outside. So I think that's been super beneficial. Let's see. We use Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook for our social media accounts. Our public information office is in charge of the stories and works. I'm also in, Andrew and I are both in public information office as well. We're just not directly tied into the posts on our social media account at the current time. So, but we put out information on harmful algal blooms and all of the stories where we're impactful environmentally speaking, and ways that we're working with our partners in the community to show that we're approachable and to show that we're willing to help. Assistance has been an area where our director has spread that across the entire agency with performance goals and evaluations. So I think that's been really good to spread the wealth, so to speak. Our inspectors were doing a lot in the field as far as assistance during their inspection process historically. And so I think finally, the comments that we get back, I wrote some down actually, and this is part of telling that story and those feel-good closures. But thank you for taking the time to explain or to give me that training or to help me find that resource. We appreciate the follow-up. I couldn't have gotten my business started without your help. Those types of comments and that customer feedback help to continue to keep us motivated and support our progress as we continue to work on improving our program as a continuous improvement effort along the line.
Thanks, Belinda. Yeah, that's a good point. Again, that you're kind of good wrap up of it's all about the connections and customers. So I'm going to move this third question to Sarah Johnson on just talk about what's successful and what's working, including technology or any techniques you would recommend.
Just trying to unmute. All right. So I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to speak highly of MS Teams. I don't know how many of you have MS Teams, but since we were shifted to that in the state of New Hampshire, it's just a fantastic tool, folks. The recording capabilities, the networking capabilities, the file sharing, it's just been amazing for all of us to use internally as well as externally to keep those networking relationships with the external providers, such as assistance providers, as I work closely with the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center provider, trade associations, clients. I've done lots of stuff online through MS Teams and clients and webinars. It's just been fantastic. If you don't have it, I'm sorry, but it has been really good. And again, social media, I'm surprised how well I've implemented that through my program to use that. I post all the time. I'm now doing, at the suggestion of our public information officer, because of Small Business Week, I am actually sharing the small businesses that I'm working with. I asked permission, obviously, was out at an auto body shop yesterday, and I asked if could I take a picture and post it on social media. He's like, yeah. I go, that's great, because I get free press, and this was awesome. I was like, oh, yay, free. So I posted about that site visit in that town. But a lot of you may be against that, but I do ask, and I won't do that if they don't want to, but it's really been very helpful and positive reaction to that. It's also a great cross training to DES staff, because I'm linked to the DES Facebook, Instagram, Twitter account. So other employees are also linked into that way. And so they get to see what I'm doing, and they might not hear it at a meeting or might not be in the same group I am at the internal meeting. So they are getting a little snapshot of what I'm doing and maybe make a connection there. So it's a lot of cross training, in my opinion, for that. And I wish I had done a poll about this. How many of you use the tasks in Outlook? Because that tool is quite amazing, and what it can do and how you can stay on track of things. And it's not as much as a project management tool. I've tried a couple of those, don't like it as well, but I really like the way tasks to-do list works and how to stay on focus and putting priorities first and making decision on what really I'm working on that day and who I need to call because somebody called and I need to make sure I call them back. If I don't, it comes back up the next day as red to remind me like, oh, I missed that one. And which is a little tough when you're a one-person program. And I do take vacations. No one's going to call that small business in a week if I take a week's vacation. And I'm not checking my voicemail for that kind of stuff. So that I'm sorry, but I'm just not. But anyways, it's a great tool to use and recurring tasks and it really kind of helps me stay focused. And it goes back to that first thing when you're a one-person program and we're all busy. Even if you're not a one-person program, it's really hard. We're expected to do a lot with nothing. I mean, we all do. We are just like small businesses. We're expected to do a lot with not really having a lot of time and resources and energy to do everything. So we're all trying to do our best. And I try to remember that when I visit and talk to small businesses. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to do our best. And I think that's why I'm really glad I'm an assistant provider and not a compliance person. I provide compliance assistant, but I'm not making them do anything, so we can take our time and do what needs to be done in a way that's thoughtful and considerate and doesn't stress them out and doesn't stress me out. And I really appreciate that part of the job. The client I saw yesterday actually asked me that question. He's like, why do you like your job? And I started to talk to him about it, why. And I'm just, that is kind of cool that I'm helping someone that wants my help, and then we can just do it on our own timeline and just not have to worry about other things. So yes, I really appreciate being on this panel, and I'm gonna let Dan go next. But thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, that's a good segue to Dan. And Dan, we only have about 7 minutes left. And if we have time, maybe we can sneak one question in based on the general trend I've seen in chat. So yeah, I know you could go on a lot about teams and everything we're doing. So what makes it successful for our program? What tools and technology would you recommend?
So I think first off, and some of the other panelists said the same thing, is providing excellent customer service. So you can have the best tools, you can have the best program in the world, but if you're not adaptable to new technologies or the technologies of your customers, if you're not aware of their knowledge level, and if you're not available, you're not gonna have repeat customers. I think the other thing is, and I mentioned this, I think, in the first question, your internal customers, in other words, your own program, your own agency, your own entity that you work out of, they are actually your most important customers possible. So making sure that you provide assistance resources, you're looked as like so unfortunately, sometimes we're looked at as the easy button of like, here's this dumpster fire, we'll just give it to Dave Foulkes and he'll fix it. But that's a good and bad problem to have. For instance, we dealt with marinas in the state that are installing fish cleaning stations. And it's not just a picnic table and a garden hose. These things are like the Bass-O-Matic you may have seen from a Saturday Night Live skit years and years ago. But it grinds these things up, has a 4,000 gallon holding tank, and it turns out that they're going to be more of an environmental nightmare to the POTWs they discharge to, or if they have to have their own wastewater treatment plant on site. But we were brought into that one to come up with some really easy management options. We quickly turned around and created a fact sheet that then could be used, and that not only helps our external, but also helped our internal customers. And what do when they get good service is they come right back, right, Dave? They just keep coming back. Another thing that you can do is having innovative, and I have to stress that one again, innovative assistance tools. I know many of you have emission calculators where our hands are a little bit tied here in Ohio with using those calculators, but that makes it a heck of a lot easier for businesses to figure out their emissions without having to have an engineering degree. Permit Wizard, we're revamping that right now. Dave is actually leading the charge on revamping our Permit Wizard, but finding easy ways to digest all of this information to let a business know not every single regulation that they could possibly run into, but the main regulations and permits that are going to apply to their business. Webinars is a huge one. We have really, kind of going back to what some other of the panelists have said, the pandemic actually forced us to be far more efficient. And as a result, we ended up with, our numbers have grown exponentially. In 2019, we had 5,000 webinar attendees. In 2020, we had 10,000. In 2021, we had 15,000. These people are hungry for this information. And if you make it interactive and it's not boring and it's specific, it gets to the point, they can ask their questions. You have subject matter experts behind the scenes answering questions concurrently while the presenter is going through their content. All of that is really, really useful. Another thing that we're starting to, we will be working on, and this might be news to Dave Foulkes, but I really want to push more short, informational, and interactive modules, if you will. So think about our webinars. You do a 1 hour webinar, that's a lot of information and a lot of time that you're asking the audience to not only sit through, but also to digest what they just said. And I don't know about you, but I do just about everything at home, like fixing an appliance or something. I go to YouTube and I find a video with that particular make and model of whatever it is. And if it's a 5-minute video and it gives me what I need, that's what I will watch. If it's an hour long, I'm probably going to look for the shorter version. But why can't we build something like that and kind of get out of the traditional way of doing webinars or writing big guidance documents? Because you really think Joe's Automotive is going to sit there and read a 100-page guidance document when they've never been inspected by the agency in 30 years of existence? Probably not. But if you give them some really cool interactive tools that are short, to the point, succinct, gets them the information that they need without too much information, I think that's far more useful. And then the last thing I have is marketing of your services. So this goes into what do we use? We use social media. Yes, there's lots of room for improvement, and I'll be careful how much I say that because this is being recorded. But we use Twitter, LinkedIn, and there's lots of opportunities for us to further expand that. E-blasts, listservs, targeting those to specific audience, utilizing pictures in your marketing materials, even including headshots of the presenters. Sometimes I think it helps for folks to see that that's actually a human being and not some kind of regulatory monster. I think your best way that you can market your service is actually internal. It's through your actual inspectors. Having those folks, they're out there, boots on the ground, interacting with businesses more than anybody. Those are the folks that can refer work to your shop. And we are out of time, so I could keep going. I will stop.
And I apologize for that. That was good conversation. And I didn't want to cut into I want to thank our panelists, first of all. It's great. Sounds like we could have gone longer. There were a couple of good questions that came in, kind of a theme of more about, how do you delineate between, your program and the regulatory programs and making sure their missions and goals don't interfere with your SBEAP mission and goals. And then how do you say no, which I thought was, I chuckled because everybody has that, like it's whether it's resource limitations or, or driving 2 hours in state of Utah, right? To go help a company we're trying to do it virtually. So I don't, do we have time for each of them to have like a minute, or I don't want to cut into the stretch time. So I was going to ask Chris and Nancy, because I want to be invited back to do this again. So I don't want to blow up my facilitator duties.
Careful what you wish for there, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we better wrap up just so
okay.
we can keep on target with the time. I don't know. Does anybody else have a concern that it looks like Dave was in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and he's been dropped into somebody's lawn? Dan, please save him.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
That's just my Zoom background that I picked for another Zoom meeting and I never change it. So I apologize for that. So my green screen.
No problem.
There you go.
So anyway, I want to thank Dave and thank all of the panelists. That was a really great discussion, and unfortunately, we don't have time for any questions at the moment, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next. What we've got scheduled is a real quick stretch break